Hi everyone, welcome to Dungeons and Dragons' new show, The Dungeon Master's Guide. Today we're going to create an adventure with both an experienced dungeon master and a novice dungeon master. Who are these dungeon masters, you ask? We have Travis Oates and Rachel Seeley today, and before we get to them, I want to thank Dungeons and Dragons and thank you for this opportunity. It is wonderful. I would like to thank Earthbreaker Goon for this brand new mug. This is Tea Fling. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's a tea, and they flung it, so it's Tea Fling. But there's also a Tea Fling. It's funny if you play D&D. So we are going to be raffling off a Dungeon Master's Guide. So I believe the raffle is already turned on in chat. TK is our lead moderator today. So yeah, make sure you pay attention throughout the entire show because TK is going to hit that raffle button at the end of the show. When? It's up to TK. And then TK is going to let me know who it is. There are no location limitations. We will send it to anywhere in the world. You have to be in chat and you have to connect with TK in order to win. Otherwise, we'll redraw the raffle. At the end of the show, we will be asking our dungeon masters 3 questions. So if you want to ask a question, go ahead and type it in chat, but in all capital letters, put question, please. It just helps be able to find it. So today's theme, I'm going to kind of give you this before we go into a bunch of stuff. Today's theme is, we're going to kind of surprise the dungeon masters, level 1 through 4. Inspired by Dragon Heist is urban mystery. So urban mystery, how would you create an urban mystery for beginner players 1 through 4? Before we go to that and there and all of that, we're going to talk a little bit about players at the table. Just because you're a dungeon master doesn't mean that you can just play the way you want to. You have to remember that dungeon mastering, well, Dungeons and Dragons is about cooperative gameplay, and you have to hear your players, what their wants are, what their needs are. You want to make sure that your vision is aligned with their vision so that everyone can play in a very happy way. You got to find out whether your players like heavy mechanics or heavy role play. Do the characters... I keep saying characters and players. I don't know why I keep getting them all mixed up. Do the players want to roll for their decisions, or do they want to rely on the dungeon master to referee their decisions? Are they wanting to do playful PvP? We do that a lot in Sirens of the Realms, where the girls end up in food fights and they have to roll against each other. Or do your players really want non-confrontational gaming? Those are all things that you need to think about. Also, think about boundaries. You have boundaries. There are things that you don't want to broach as a dungeon master. So it's really good to talk with your players and find out if your boundaries align, because some people really want to push boundaries and other people don't. So have these conversations before you start your game. We have Lauren Urban, our correspondent from D&D Beyond, and she's going to tell you about ways that you can actually find players in the first place. Lauren?
So your friend has convinced you to watch this amazing new stream where people play Dungeons and Dragons live in front of an audience. Or maybe you've started listening to some of your friends' podcasts and their D&D podcasts are kind of awesome. Or maybe you're helping out with a live stream for charity and they're all playing Dungeons and Dragons. Whatever it took, you suddenly started watching a lot of D&D online and it's awesome. But now you've started to realize, hey, I want to play D&D too, but where do I find people to play with? Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Urban. You might know me as OboeCrazy. I'm the community manager for D&D Beyond, and I hear this question every single day because let's face it, finding other people to play with can be the hardest part of our hobby. Fortunately, There are lots of options for finding others to play with out there. First, start local. Start with your friends and family. Ask them. Chances are, if you're interested in playing, they're just as interested in playing too, and they're just waiting for you to ask. If not them, they might know someone who wants to play. Coworkers, friends of friends. There's a good chance if you ask them, then they're probably going to say, "Oh yeah, I've always wanted to try playing D&D." Now, if you're still looking for some people, or if you're having trouble finding space to play the game, check your local game stores. Many stores have spaces dedicated to running games, and many are also running Adventures League, which is the ongoing official D&D campaign. You can usually just join in on a game or sign up for a future one. Also, ask the people running the store. Often they know other people like you who are looking to start or run a game. Now, if none of that works, it's time to widen your net with the internet. That joke was funnier in my head. There are a ton of ways to play D&D online, and suddenly you have the whole world available to you to play with. So where do you start? Well, remember that stream or podcast or charity game that you were a fan of? Chances are a lot of other people were fans of that too, and a lot of them are probably looking for games too. Start with those streams. Search for forums or Discords or Facebooks or Reddit pages dedicated to fans of some of your favorite streams or podcasts. Chances are they've got a looking for group section. They like D&D. They probably want to play D&D too. You've already got a shared interest, so jump in and make some new gaming friends. You can also come by the D&D Beyond forums, where we've got a whole looking for group area, people who are playing with play-by-post. You can just join on in. Finally, if you're still having problems finding people to play with, I have one last suggestion for you. Go be a DM and start your own game. Now I know what you're going to say. But Lauren, I've never played before. I can't be the DM. Yes, you can. You can absolutely be the dungeon master. The only requirement to being a DM is that you want to play and you want to share this game with other people. Everything else is easy. Now, if you still feel like you need a little bit of help running the game, there are dozens of excellent videos online with advice, tips, and suggestions for new DMs. But honestly, you're going to be great. Go pick up the starter set, which has everything you and your players need, and then just go run a game. Go back to those friends and convince them to come over for an evening and just run a game for them. Go to that store and offer to run games for the person behind the counter or anyone else who's showing up. Jump into that Discord, start signing people up. Because when you're the DM, you don't have to find people to play with. People will come to you. Trust me. Now go run that game and go have fun playing D&D. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lauren, and our family at D&D Beyond. Go check out dndbeyond.com. It's super awesome. I use it at least 5 times a day. I'm actually not exaggerating, and they do not pay me to say that. While we set up our special guests, we are going to cut to our not-so-live band, Sirens of the Realms.
Far below the sun, where life is fleeting, there's a single lonely heart that's barely beating, and the road you're on could lead you there, so beware. With many miles to go on the King's Highway, you could try your own design or do it my way. On a secret path I would take you there. Just pay my fare. In the underdark quite confusing. There's a sense of dread hanging in the air. It's everywhere. In the underdark, sanity departs, and the only thing you know is how to bleed. In the underdark, you'll be torn apart, and the face of terror looking back at you will drive you mad.
Hi guys, welcome back to Dungeon Master's Guide. It takes a lot of fuel to be a dungeon master. I can't tell what I want today. Do I want coffee? Do I want tea? There's a lot happening in my brain because Dungeon Master. But yes, welcome back. And we have two wonderful, wonderful guests today. We have Rachel Seeley and Travis Oates. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah. I'm so happy to have you guys here. I don't ever get to spend a lot of time with you, so this is actually really special for me. I want to get into your brains, and then also we're going to share that with everyone else. Why don't you guys tell everyone where, like, what you're up to, where they can find you, what you're about.
I'm Rachel Seeley. I'm looking at that camera. I'm on Girls Goes Glory, which happens right after this show on the D&D Twitch channel. I have been DMing just for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. But I've been doing text-based roleplay since the dawn of time because I'm 1,001 years old.
Yeah. I'm Travis Oates. I'm a voiceover artist and a writer and director. I have been a DM since the days that dinosaurs roamed the earth. I'm probably the oldest person in this room. Right now, I'm working on a new TV show called Above Board, which is a secret. I think it's the first time we've formally announced it. It's a new TV show all about board games and role-playing games and CCGs, and that's going to come out sometime in the next half of the year, or first half of next year, I should say.
So exciting.
One thing that everyone should know, you were one of the dungeon masters for the very first Celebrity Chair D20.
I was. That was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, that was 2010.
Yeah.
And you rolled up, and I've been playing for about 30 years. But I've never seen anybody travel with a horde of minis before.
I did.
You came in with what looked like a tackle box.
Yeah.
It was like a multi-level tackle box.
Yeah, and I had like a steamer trunk of stuff, basically.
Yeah.
I really did. Because I didn't know what to expect. So I just kind of, if you ever see my house, it is like I have an entire library in my house. And an entire section of the library is just D&D. I have probably every D&D book ever published past 1978.
Wow. I come to your library.
Yeah. I mean, literally everything, every module, it's crazy.
Do you have the special edition gift set that they just came out with?
Oh, that they just came out with?
Yeah.
No, and I'll tell you why. I have been mostly buying my books on D&D Beyond. That's I find them so convenient. I still have the core books, and I usually buy about 4 players' handbooks every time there's a new system, so that people who are playing have them available to them. But all like the source books, I've been getting all of those on Beyond now. I just find it so convenient.
Well, even as a dungeon master, so I ran a game of Dungeon of the Mad Mage yesterday. And I had not read it yet because there's a lot of reading to do and a lot of work to do. And I read it on my phone, swapped it to my computer. Then I pulled up all the NPCs, all the monsters. You can scroll through things, and I tabbed everything out in Google Docs. So I hyperlinked everything So it was completely easy access. I mean, when you have a bad guy, you just kind of hover over, and all of a sudden you have all the stats. What's frightened? Here's exactly what's frightened. Yeah. So I am a big advocate for that. Yeah. But I also do collect.
Yeah.
I like the feel of the paper. I'm old school. I like audiobooks, and I like, getting it on a Kindle or something. But there's nothing that compares to the feel of, getting to the end of a book and going, oh my God, I've read all of this.
Yeah. Part of it with me is just room.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I have a very, very big house, and yet I'm still running out of room. I really am.
Yeah, I like especially the collectors of it. I like collecting the books.
Yeah, especially when I add in like the board games and stuff too. Yeah. I have about, even before starting to do the show I'm doing, I had about 300 board games. So, I mean, it's just...
That's when you build a basement just for the board games.
We have 2 or 3 rooms in the house that are like specialty rooms. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Game day.
I really need to go over there.
You need to come over. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I will take that as an invitation.
Absolutely.
I'll just hop in upon your house one day. Yeah. But today, you're in our Maze Arcana house. And what we are doing here is we're going to make an adventure. We're going to make an adventure for beginner players, levels 1 through 4. That's not to say levels 1 through 4 are for beginner players, because anyone can play that. Mm-hmm. Our theme is... thank you, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, for your ideas, but we're going to make our own urban mystery. So, a couple different things. Each dungeon master starts their adventures differently. How do you guys go about that?
I pick some, if I have, something that's been really inspiring me lately, I'll go deep dive into that. I use a lot of, I consume a lot of media, a lot of fantasy. So I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of different places. When I'm starting out, I kind of pick a theme and run with it. Like urban mystery, something that's a little bit vague, so I don't have to stick to one particular thing, but just to paint a color. And I do like collages, I make playlists, I do everything I possibly can to get into that world and stay in that world as I'm making it.
Cool.
Well, I'm a writer by trade. That's my primary job. And so I think a little bit more, top level in that, how are the logistics of how I'm putting this together? And you really hit the nail on the head. When you're dealing with beginner players, how can I have them introduce the story to them and have them start to be comfortable at being part of the storytellers of the story? Mm-hmm. One of the great things about D&D is it's storytelling, but we're all storytellers. So every character is telling their part of the story, and you're kind of guiding that as the DM. So how can I give them an environment where they have freedom to tell their own story, but with beginner players, have a narrower path that they can tell that story? And so with a beginning thing like this, I would try and narrow the path as much as possible so that they don't feel overwhelmed, by the possibilities of what they're going to do.
And that's not railroading. That is just kind of showing them a route so that they can start learning how to explore, instead of offering them 10 choices. Okay, blank canvas. Where do we begin? Do we begin with villains? Do we begin with the kind of city? Do we begin with the problem?
It's a mystery. Mm-hmm. So I suggest we begin with a mystery. Yeah. And what I would do is I would take your adventuring party, and I would have them individually, having been captured by some organization, and start the game with the characters captured and knowing that they are going to be killed by this organization.
Oh, I like that.
They don't know each other, so they will get to introduce each other to them live within the game, and they don't know why they've been captured and why they're about to be killed.
I like that. Ooh, that's heavy and awesome. Yeah. Okay. Oh my God. All right. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll start with notes. So we're going to put captured. Sorry, audience. I can't actually write anymore. Captured, and then the mystery is who, what, when, where, why.
Why? Mm-hmm. Why is this happening?
Why were they captured? Who's the organization?
And why those individual people are being captured?
And why do they have to be killed in the end?
They could have they could have completely different backgrounds, but obviously there's something that the characters don't know that connects them within the story.
I did something really similar to this I took a bunch of newbies from my workplace and I started to sort of get them into the story, and I did something very similar to this, but I all got them into it because they were sitting in a tavern and they were all somehow around this table, and someone had something, and they were talking to someone across the table, very shady business, and they got bumped. Their chair got bumped because someone was attempting to steal what was in their hand, and it went flying. And all of these people instinctively, for whatever reason, because they're a paladin, they don't want someone to drop something, because they're a rogue and they want to take it. They all grabbed for this amulet at the same time, and they were transported into this other realm.
Very cool.
And into a location where, because they had the amulet, they were captured.
And the nice thing about beginning players, and this is what I mean by giving it a narrower path, because they've been captured, they don't have all their stuff. They don't have to look down at their character sheet and have an overwhelming amount of things that are there. They have just the tools that they would normally have in front of them. So they start out without their weapons. They start out without their items. And as the story progresses, as the adventure progresses from the beginning, they will get those things back, obviously. But they can look at just what's ahead of them. And that also forces them to interact with one another and start role-playing from the beginning. Because with newer players, one of the most difficult things is to get them comfortable with role-playing, because it can feel very awkward if you're not used to doing that.
And they rely so much on the character sheets and on the tools that they have in their pockets that they don't really remember to look around or up.
This is also just a great excuse for even, non-amateur, very experienced players to, as you are locked in this cell together, get to know each other, get to know what your skills are, if someone can pick the lock or whatever.
I think the difference between a beginner and advanced group would be how hard do you make it to get out of that situation. If it's an advanced group, you make it much more difficult to get out of that situation. If it's a beginner group, you don't make it so difficult to get out of that trap.
Like getting out of a castle versus a little tribal area or a fortress or something.
Cool. Yeah. So we know what we want them to figure out. How do we go about actually do we start at the end? Like, this is these people, this is why they captured it, or how else would we go about that?
Well, here's what I would do if I was constructing this adventure. I would have a list of things that I want the eventual bad guy to be. Like, let's say I know I want the eventual bad guy to be a head of state, or let's say I want them to be maybe the mayor of the city, if it's a city, or somebody right below the mayor, somebody in high political power. And I would list a few traits of what I would want him to be. But then, as the characters develop and start going into their own backstory, I would fill in some of these blanks from what the characters are discovering about themselves and each other, so that it feels like the characters are coming up with some of that themselves. You don't want to necessarily lock the bad guy in completely, because it's a mystery. And if you want them to discover that mystery, you've kind of got to take some of the things that they would discover in their own.
Improvise it on your own.
Yeah,
I like to create a villain after I know as much about their characters as they have figured out, and then tweak it along the way. But I also like to have, my first thought was, why are they being killed? Well, it could be some hyper powerful, heretical religious leader who is trying to make an example of someone because of something in one of their backstories. Like, maybe they're a paladin of Helm, and this guy does not like Helm, so he's taking someone young and inexperienced and green, and he's going to use them as some kind of sacrifice, or even just, string them up in the town square to show that we have the power here, or something like that.
Each one, though, can be a different piece to the puzzle. What you should do is have the bad guy have a specific thing that he's trying to do. So let's say he's a religious leader. I like that, because it's political power. So he's a religious leader. Maybe that religious leader is trying to not just be the head of the religion for that city, but the head of the government for that city. So power. He's trying to maybe have the religious, he's building forces up, and the guards that were doing the religious stuff are gaining power, so that they're going to take over the political machinations of the city. And so each one may have a different reason. Maybe one of them was a paladin that he felt was too noble to go along with his cause. Maybe another one was a thief that somehow stumbled onto to stole from a house of somebody who had the plans. Now, the thief never looked at those plans, but he doesn't know that. because he knows
Yeah.
he was there, so that's why he's going to off him. Maybe another one was, all these different things can be pieces of this puzzle. Maybe one of them is a relative of that.
And you can give this villain a
or
secret
like
or
a
something.
brother or a son or something, and they feel that that. Because that will often, you got to throw in some, if it's a mystery, we need some red herrings.
Yeah.
So you want them to go, well, of course, it's my brother, so it couldn't possibly be my brother that what would kill me. No, actually, your brother would do that because he doesn't want you to challenge his authority. So those are the kind of things I would fill in.
Yeah, and it's really cool. You can actually front load that. So one of the things I like to do is have a set of questions. And sometimes I'll give it to just one player.
Sure.
And, well, all the players, but individually. And sometimes I'll do a group role play where they kind of create their own backstories with each other.
Yeah.
So that might be a really cool thing, is how do you relate to your city or to this religion, and kind of have them tell you. Yeah. So front load.
I did something interesting, and I don't know if I do this with beginner characters, but I've done this with an advanced characters in a mystery kind of thing. And what I told people, and they had to do it through role play, but I said, you're not allowed to give your own backstory. However, the other characters are allowed to give your backstory. And what I mean by that is you can't tell me anything about your past, but I can go, I know you. You weren't you the person who was thrown in jail because of that rebellion? And so you can then acknowledge that, yes, I was. But it's other people giving you backstories. And it was very interesting to watch people, because then they don't fall into those familiar patterns. Because if you've been doing this for a while, people have their comfort zone. So it was neat to have people being given backstories that were not in their comfort zone.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing.
There was something I was doing. I had a little podcast crew where I had no idea what was going to happen. I really like to make stuff up on the spot. So they all started off having this shared dream where they all died. And then one of them was, stuck up in front of this giant god who was laughing at him. And based on his role, he rolled a nat 20 on a history check afterwards. And I said, yes, this is something that you know because you're a part of this organization. Right. So then having whatever happens in their role sort of inform more of their backstory, so that you have your basis, and then you flesh it out even further. You unpeel whatever else is out there.
Cool. So we have the bad guy, religious leader who wants political power. That's his drive. Why? They want to make this group as an example of. They want to sacrifice them for a thing. We have here, keep it vague so players can help create the person. Red herrings to throw people off.
And because this is 1 through 4, I would have this be the kernel of, I think the next step of this adventure would be maybe this guy, this is his full taking over this city. It's his first step to maybe like a holy war that he's going to try and start.
I like that.
So even when you defeat this guy, you find out he's not the big bad. That really the big bad is this guy who is outside there, who is higher, he's told him to trigger this.
So that would be the next. At it, and your characters are already so invested because they've gone through the smaller portion of it. And it's only going to get worse.
Cool. So we have the city, we have temples, we have political institutions, we have places these people might hang out for locations. That's it's a city. We can kind of glance over that. But let's talk about the different minions. Let's talk about the different encounters people might go through. We'll start all the way back to they're captured. And where would they be captured? Like, where would they be and then have to escape out of?
Well, I think since you said religion, I think they could be in a catacombs of some kind.
Underneath a temple.
Yeah.
Secret catacombs underneath a temple.
Like maybe under like an abandoned temple.
Yeah. So that's out of the city. If they do escape, they have, miles of hills to roam.
It could be a temple that was under use, but maybe there was an earthquake so that, you can have... having these catacombs be much larger, but portions of it have collapsed.
We're going to skip that one because we actually did that in the last adventure.
Oh, did we? Okay.
Yeah.
But
I want to keep it. I want to keep it in the city.
It depends on your villains. You could have. I mean, who is this religious leader's minions?
I think you could still have the temple within the city. I think it's just been condemned for some reason. It's not being used for whatever reason. If we don't want it to do an earthquake, we can say that maybe it was housed plague, so it was used as a plague house and it's still under quarantine. And maybe that's even their cover story. Maybe their cover story is they take, dissonants there that have the plague.
Yeah.
So you have an underground temple environment.
You could even end up finding out that perhaps this religious leader created or started this plague or introduced it into the population to sort of, maybe this was a temple that belonged to a faction that didn't jive with his faction.
It could even be that the plague is not a real plague, that the plague is something that makes it look like you have the plague.
Yeah.
So
some
that,
kind of a curse or something.
Yeah. So that it doesn't truly, because he doesn't want to take over. He doesn't want to take over a town that's full of the plague.
Yeah.
But he does want people to look like they have the plague, so that
they get pushed away.
Plus, that fear allows fear allows you to do things you wouldn't normally.
Super powerful weapon for the villain.
Okay, so we'll say this is a 3 to 4 hour adventure.
Sure.
Let's talk about encounters. Let's talk about what things these people might experience in this one adventure, 1 through 4. That's it. We're going to contain the ideas now. We've got our general idea. We're going to take it and move it.
All 4 levels happen in 4 hours.
It is adventures player levels.
Yeah. Right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yes.
Then I would start out. Obviously, you have to escape. So you're in some kind of a locked room. Mm-hmm. And I think you hear sounds either of torture or death somewhere elsewhere. So you know what's coming.
Yeah, you set the fire under your players as well. You have to escape.
You give them a situation where there's either things there like broken glass or something along those lines that they can get out of whatever bonds they're in. Mm-hmm. And then I think you simply enter in with the dumb minions who think they're going to come there with some people who are knocked out, and you can jump them. Put things in the room that can be used as improvised weapons. Yeah. So, a metal bar, that has come off of something, mm-hmm. a table leg, anything that could be used as an improvised weapon, and you just make sure, that whoever's coming in isn't too beefy.
Mm-hmm. So let's actually pick some minions right now.
Cultists. Sure. I had to use these for a very low level group. Cultists are relatively low level. They fit the theme. They can't do a whole lot, but they're still a little bit intimidating.
They don't have big armor. So their AC is manageable mm-hmm. with improvised weapons.
They're like Sparts, where they don't have a whole lot of AC, but they have a decent amount of health. So it does feel like a battle. It's not just a backhand and they're down. Yeah.
Plus, this is where the monks in the party can really shine.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Cool. So our first area has the minions who come in, try to do whatever it is that they're going to do. What is their purpose? So the whole thing, about story is everyone has a need, everyone has a purpose mm-hmm. for why they're there. Mm-hmm. What is the purpose for this specific one? Why would they be in this room?
Oh, the player characters or the cultists?
The cultists.
Well, I think the cultists are probably don't know a ton about the overarching story, but they know that these are either plague victims or heretics that need to be destroyed. So they need to be put down.
Maybe a patrol.
They're there to kill them.
Kill them, yeah.
Okay.
They're here to kill the player characters.
All right. We'll say patrol.
That does, however, if they're an execution party, that does put the players, I think, at a bit of a disadvantage because they might have an executioner with them or someone like that's a big guard.
I think, keep in mind, they think that the player characters are going to be unconscious.
True.
So I don't think they're coming in to drag them out somewhere and,
mm-hmm.
and off them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't expect the characters to be awake.
Yeah.
I think that's the element of surprise. Yeah. So they wouldn't have. I think at the end of the dungeon, like you say, you might have, talking about minions, something like an executioner or somebody who is the tougher thing. Yeah. Once they've gone and got their weapons and armor and stuff back.
So perhaps. If they were going to kill them, they probably need to take them somewhere, right?
Yeah. So they're there to take them to another room where they will.
Well, here's the question: if they do that, the players could just go with it, and I think
that would be another way they could do it. Yeah.
But what I think is that we keep them in this room and have them escape here, and have that be like their first bit of experience and using their environment,
mm-hmm.
containing the environment, so they're not just immediately running out and doing stuff elsewhere. They actually have a chance to look around and kind of work their ways. So what's another idea for having the minions stay there and having them have to do their battle within this one room?
Well, I see what you're saying. I mean, they could be coming to this room to do their business in this room then. in that case. And
it could also just be a patrol that's coming through to make sure that, you know, no one has pulled a lockpick out of nowhere, or because then they're just passing by. And at that point, you could have given your players enough time to manage to unlock the door, or allow
they could
your
be bringing in one more prisoner.
Yes, also that's a good way to involve an NPC as well. That gets you a little bit more information about why they're there, where they're at, and who they're up against.
Good way to do a switcheroo at the end.
Yeah.
I thought you were our friend. I've been working for this guy the whole time.
Exactly.
Possible.
Yes, maybe the whole escape, the reason why they were able to escape is bad guys wanted them to escape.
Yeah.
But you want
Wants
make
to
them
find out how
feel.
much they actually know.
Yeah.
Maybe the entire adventure is really a very creative.
The whole thing is a red herring.
But it's a very creative interrogation.
Yeah.
With the NPC basically being the interrogator who's finding out all the things about how much these guys actually know. You think, the players will think the whole time the NPC is with them trying to figure out the mystery as well, but really he's the interrogator.
Cool. So we have a very short amount of time to finish this.
Sure.
That is our first one. We'll say it's a mystery in 3 parts.
Sure.
What is our second part that leads to the ending of this?
Well, I think our second act would be in them trying to figure out the core of the mystery.
Yeah.
If the first act is our introduction and that's the start of it, our second act would be what's the core of the mystery, and our third act would be the
conclusion.
Confrontation of the big bad, which actually in the way that she's doing may be that NPC. That NPC may turn out being your big bad at the end.
That's true.
And the religious leader may be, like I said, the kernel to the next part of the adventure.
Their mystery could be if they have if the NPC is a magic user, if they have a magic user in the party, they can identify that this is not a plague. This is not what it seems. Let's go find out what it is, because we're now all
and I like
infected with it.
So I think the finding out of the mystery is maybe have 4 different roads that they could go down. 1, what's going on with this plague? Is this a real plague? 2, how have they been hiding all these missing people? Because I think as they escape from this prison, they'll find other victims there.
Absolutely.
and trying to figure out, okay, who are these victims? Where are they? And why are they doing this? 3, who would be the person who would gain from this? So that would be the other question of who in the city would gain from there being a plague, would gain from these people being dead, who is going to lead that? Right, it'll point to the religion. Yeah.
This also gives you a great moment at the very beginning of the game to mention that there are like 1,000 missing persons flyers.
Right, yeah.
So some people could be here to gain a reward. Your paladins and your good guys could be here to, help figure out what's going on. So that pulls your characters in even further for why they're here.
And you could even have one of the player characters have not been from this city.
Yeah.
So why were they taken from this other city? And again, that may lead to a kernel of something that ends at the end of the adventure.
Maybe they have family that went missing.
Yeah, or it could either be they were coming here because of family, or it could be that something's happening in their city that will take them to the next adventure.
Yeah, this is something that is starting to unfold in all of these cities, so it's even bigger than you think.
This is so amazing. Yeah. I've got core of the mystery. Is the plague real? Who gained from it? The religious guy, this religious leader for political reasons. How are they hiding all the missing people and the flyers?
And when they find out, how are they implementing this plague? Are they doing it through food? Is it being brought in by boats? Is it in the water? What are the mechanics behind how this plague is being delivered?
And then how do you dispel it?
Yeah. How do you stop it? And how do you get the word out?
Yeah.
That it's fake.
Yeah.
Right. And I think once they have uncovered all these things, that's when your NPC that you introduced them, that's been with them all along, says, "That's great. I think we finally figured this out, and now that I know everything that you know, guys, come in here. Let's off these guys. I know everything. I was the interrogator. I tricked you into telling me everything you know, and now we're going to off you."
Yeah. Oh, this is so good.
You could have that wonderful villain speech of like, did you really think that it would be that easy to get out of our clutches?
Yeah.
You just walked out. Do you think that would really be how it would be? You know, like this whole kind of villainous thing of like, every step of the way, we were protecting you. That's why you've lived this long. Now we're going to kill you.
And that's actually fun because the only real encounters are in the beginning and at the end. Everything else is making your way through and not getting caught.
And you can have, I think, the second act can have, depending on the length can have 1 or 2 combat encounters. You know, you can have something at the docks maybe or so. Yeah. But you can have 1 or 2 combat encounters, mostly to do with cultists, maybe some rats. You got to throw some rats in there at the beginning of the adventure. But I think at the end of the day, because it's a mystery, it's less combat oriented and more investigation.
Yeah. This also
and player interaction.
This could give you a great moment of like they have to go to this specific temple to see if they can, you know, do some medicine checks or talk to some clerics or people that would maybe further understand hexes or whatever. And then you get some encounters with cultists there.
Sure.
So your players will subconsciously go, "Oh, we're on the right track," and then you'll go, "Yes," because the villain brought you there.
So we're going to wrap this up. We've got a very solid middle chunk that pretty much is, this game could go a good 4 hours easily. The kind of things they might encounter so that so people watching can just start writing this. And we encourage you to write this on your own and make it your own. We got rats. We have cultists. What guards. Other guards?
Anybody who would normally be part of the city mechanism that would then be corrupt. So guards, like you say, cultists, anybody who would work for the church, you know,
a mini boss with the executioner.
Oh, yeah. Executioner. Okay. All right. So
who you could have the NPC kill.
Yeah.
And then the executioner comes back at the end, you know, for the big fight at the end.
Okay. Let's talk about the big fight at the end. We only have a couple minutes. What does this look like? Where is it at? What is on its side that's going to be kind of defending itself? What else does it have as minions?
I actually have an idea for this one. So the whole reason that the NPC is going through this with you is because they have created or commissioned this faux hex. The solution to this hex or the cure lies in this temple that they cannot go in on their own. So they need pawns to go in, figure out how to cure it so that they can leave knowing about that cure and figure out a way to safeguard whatever it is that's causing this hex against that cure to make it even harder to cure.
Then have the big battle happen as they exit.
Yes.
Because it is an urban adventure. Yeah. So having something that happens in the streets, you know, and then, you know.
Right on the steps of a temple.
You know,
like that's cinematic.
Steps of a temple. So
where
it's
they come to the
time of day. Time of day.
Oh, night.
Night, absolutely.
That'd be nighttime.
Absolutely.
In fact, I would have this whole game take place at night.
Yeah, one night.
Yeah.
Okay.
One
everything is in one night. Steps of temple. Quick question. What is the name of the religious leader? Real quick.
Let's say
Duncan.
Sure.
Or Malcolm.
Malcolm Duncan.
Malcolm Duncan. There you go.
Malcolm Duncan.
He's fired.
He's fired. He's gone.
Okay. What is the name of the NPC?
Jessup.
Yeah.
Jessup.
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 Jessop. It kind of sounds like it could go either way.
Yeah, it does. It does.
What's the race of Malcolm?
I was like making the humans the bad guys.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know if
I
it's
was
me,
gonna
but
say human
oh,
too.
it's humans.
Okay, and then the NPC.
I think Elvish, because I think that may be the one that they feel might be the least likely to be a bad guy.
Yeah,
cool.
I can see that.
So here we have our our urban mystery. What is it called? This is the last bit of our adventure.
Photon. Because they don't actually get to dawn by the end of the game. And it's a fake curse.
Congratulations, you made an adventure. We're going to wrap that up and package it in the new year, and we will give it to you on the Dungeon Masters Guild. I always get those guild and guide mixed up, so I have to do it very slowly. So what is it, Photon?
Photon. Do
we all consent?
Yeah.
Photon it is. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. We have a few minutes. We have 10 minutes-ish. Of 5 minutes. We have some kind of minutes that are very small.
We have some block of time. We're not sure how.
5 for Q&A, 5 for house rules.
Thank you. Okay, so first question. Thank you, TK. I DM for players of mixed ages, and my younger players have difficulty sitting still for 3 hours and following along with roleplay or exploration encounters. Mostly they just want to whack stuff. This frustrates some of my older players. How do I incentivize combat-focused players to skew towards the other pillars?
It's tough with younger players. I've actually run a game with a group of 7-year-olds for a friend of mine. It's tough. I would tailor your game to make sure that the younger players have their moment and the older players have their moment. Mm-hmm. Pick a setting that you can very easily go to a combat in, or you can do some speaking for the older folks. Mm-hmm. You might even have the first hour of the game be just with your older players and bring the younger players in after the first hour. So they don't have to sit through what they might consider to be a bunch of boring stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Depends on how young those younger players are.
I could end up seeing myself incentivizing them some way with loot or gold or whatever, because, you know, kids are always there for the loot and adults are always there for the loot. Everyone's there for the loot. Having them go get experience points through reading a book in a library, going and find something specific about the story. And then there's so many other ways to roll the dice in these games that doesn't involve combat. Something like a sled race or gambling on horses or any kind of sport in-game that
races in particular, like a chase. A chase is really great.
Yeah, but even to that point, people just, it might be that people just want to roll and they know that they have a lot of modifiers are higher when they do combat. Therefore, they feel like they're succeeding. And it's like the psychological reason of why we play D&D is we want to attempt to be the best and do the best we can.
Also with younger players, comedy. Mm-hmm. Have some comedic things happen, and that's great for a chase, because you get in a chase and the bad guys, the whole thing of pies falls on them and stuff like that. Younger players are drawn to that comedy, and it doesn't have to be combat as long as there's some stuff that's fun for them.
Yeah.
All right. We have 2 more questions. We're going to keep them short. The answer's short. Question number 2. World building and the adventure's background is important to provide gravitas to the actions of the party. How do you approach providing clues and insight for new players to your game without doing a in-session lore info dump?
They have to figure it out along the way. I build out so much lore for my worlds, but it's the trick of being a DM and sitting on all your lore and going, you're going to find it eventually, or even if you don't, it's still there. It makes it feel more fleshed out. Allowing them to find it. I love having them find it in libraries, through books, through experiences, in towns, in temples, wherever they would normally be, like in a thieves guild. Mm-hmm. Finding out stuff around their area where they would be.
I often give them situations where they need to know that information to do the next step. So they seek out that information. Like if there's an historical thing that I want them to know, they need to know that for some reason, for some either magical reason. And I do a lot of letters and different things,
And props are great.
Props are great for tons of props for them to read and stuff.
Love props.
Cool. And this actually, the third question kind of goes back into those. How do you consider XP in terms of RP and social encounters other in combat? We have 1 minute left to answer this.
I do milestone. I love milestone.
I weight them the same as I do combats. Yeah. Actually, not so much like a milestone thing, but in that as long as it drives the story forward, that's as big of a chunk as the combats are. Yeah.
We're here for the role play.
Yeah.
Cool. So we are going to jump to your house rules. Please share with the audience your house rules. It makes your game so very you.
I had a bunch of them before when I was thinking of this question. Now I forgot them all. I am very particular with the way I have my 1s or my 20s. I had a character who was running up a crumbling staircase and they rolled a 1 and they said, "Oh, I'm dead." And I went, "No, let me tell you what happens. This is what happens." But when they roll a 20, I want them to tell me what happens. Because I don't want I want them to have more agency over what happens when they roll a 20, because it's based on their finesse and their expertise. But when they roll a 1, I want to tell them the consequences. I feel like I should be in charge of consequences. They should be in charge of their successes and telling me how they view that. And one of my other house rules is you have to give me as much backstory as you can. Give me like songs that fit your character. And I love to tailor a whole campaign so that each character gets their own big moment. So it's not just a like, you get a little piece here and here and here and here and here. It's one big arc for you, one big arc for them, and then tying them all together so that your party is cohesive. They care about each other because they are all deeply entrenched in each other's stories.
I have 2 because we have very little time. I will say that with my 1s and my 20s, I usually have them roll a second time to see what the severity of the critical success or fail is. So if somebody rolls a 1 and then they roll again and they roll like a 10 or higher, it's not as bad as if they were they're lower. And that does mean that if you roll another 1 or 20 again, you roll a third time. I actually had somebody kill a dragon with 1 blow one time because they rolled 3 20s in a row. And so I was like, well, then you went up there, you got that right under that, you got your sword right under a scale and you just shoved it right in the right place and you killed that dragon because it just seemed appropriate.
Yeah. Little dragon heart moment.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that I use is a really old school thing for you guys out there who've been playing a long time. I use Comeliness in my game, which is it becomes a seventh stat. And Comeliness is your physical attractiveness. It takes charisma and takes the physical attractiveness out of charisma. Because really charisma is not supposed to be how you look. It's supposed to be, how magnetic your personality is and how well you are with people. So by taking that comeliness and putting it in a different place, it allows people, plus you have some people who I always feel that people should have a couple low stats because it makes them more interesting. Yeah. So you always have people in that game that's like, I want to be beautiful. I want to be the best looking person in the world. That's fine. Use some of these important skills for your dump stat. Throw that up to 18. I have no problem with that. Let's drive that up. And man, you're the most attractive person ever.
But have like a dump truck of a personality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Charisma could be,
Cool.
That's fun to roll.
We call it roll for story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Low having flaws and all that is always so much more fulfilling.
Yeah. My favorite characters have had stats that were below 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I can admit I don't usually go that low, but maybe I will next time.
That's the best story.
For you guys out there watching, if you have ideas, well, send them to us because we want to hear your ideas. But make a video of your Dungeon Master house rules, 1 minute maximum, whatever format, landscape, portrait, doesn't matter. Send it to us at dndfanart@wizards.com, and we will package it and we will play it at the end of these shows in the new year. So do that, and thank you guys for watching. Thank you, my lovely guests, Rachel Seeley and Travis Oates. You guys are amazing, and this was really fun. I mean, I knew it was going to be fun, but I'm really excited to actually start wrapping it up. If you guys do it before we get to it, send it to us. I want to see it, and maybe we'll promote each other because that would be really fun. Let's see. Thank you, Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you to our wonderful Maze Arcana production team to make us look so good. Thank you, TK, for moderating. And again, thank you, audience. Why don't you guys tell everyone where they can find you one more time? We do have your Twitter handles at the bottom.
I'm Rachel Seeley. You can find me on Girls Guts Glory right after this on the D&D Twitch channel. You can also find me for a couple more Fridays over at Geek and Sundry on Overlight. It's a lot of fun. Fridays.
Look out for Above Board. You can see that on Instagram, Above Board Television, and on Twitter at Above Board TV.
Cool. Yeah. And I am the Dungeon Master host, Satine Phoenix. You can find me at Satine Phoenix on all the things. Tuesdays on twitch.tv/D&D Live. We're Sirens of the Realms. We're a Dungeon Master, a bunch of bards. It was an all-girl bard band, but you know what? We're inclusive, and I just like playing with my friends. So that's the thing. We have an Eberron show, a Maze Arcana Eberron show called Inkwell Society on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Also on Twitch. And you can get raffles and stuff like that on the Maze Arcana Twitch. And then again here. I'm sure there's other things, but I'll talk to you about them later. Thank you all. And we adore you. And we will see you actually very shortly for Girls Guts Glory.